We spoke in the past many times about Christianity, and we explained already in the past that Christianity actually has all three components of kfirah in them. Actually, it has avodah zarah, it has the idea of minut, and it has the idea of apikorsut, which is kfirah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Those three things we explained in the past, that avodah zarah is because Christians tend to bow down to a man. That's Jesus. They bow down to him, and since he's not a god, it's considered avodah zarah. And even if you consider him into a god, that's another problem of avodah zarah, because enod milvado, only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the God and nobody else besides him, enod milvado. And secondly, we explained that they have a problem with the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is just one. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is only one. There's not more than one. If you think that there is more than one God, you're actually considered to be a min. And then, if you have a problem with the message of God, and that is the Torah, you are considered to be an apikoros. So you have three levels over here. Avodah zarah, that they bow down and they worship somebody else besides HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Secondly, the problem with the God, and the problem with the message of God. Let's see this in the Rambam. The Rambam says the following. After he deals with avodah zarah, that this is simple, that the understanding of avodah zarah is somebody that worships somebody else besides HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he says that chamisha hanikraim minim. There's 5 different people that go into the category of a min. האומר שאין שם אלוה ואין לעולם מנהיג. One is that he doesn't believe at all. He's an atheist. He doesn't believe at all in a God, in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. אומר שיש שם מנהיג אבל אין שניים או יותר. Second is somebody that says that there's 2 gods or more than 2 gods, and that's Christianity, that believes that there's 3 Godheads, and that's clearly to be a min according to this. ואומר שיש שם ריבון אחד אבל שהוא גוף ובעל תמונה, or if you say that the God has a shape or a body, which also Christianity are mistaken saying that the God was formed into a shape. וכן האומר שאינו לבדו, if one says that the God is not by himself, there's other gods besides him, and therefore Christianity that says that there's 3 of them would fall into the third idea over here that the Rambam mentions to be a min. וכן העובד כוכב ומזל, and so on and so forth. So this is a min, Christianity falls into that. 3 נקראים אפיקורסים. אפיקורסים, the Gemara says, מה אפיקורס? What's the אפיקורס? Person that's מבזה תלמידי חכמים. He puts תלמידי חכמים down. He says, מה יהנו להנהן רבנן? What are they helping us? לדידו אותנו, לדידו שנו. They learn for themselves to become more educated. The truth of the matter is, the Gemara says, they don't know that the whole world stands because of the Talmidei Chachamim, because of the Torah. If you don't believe in that, you think that the world exists without the Torah, you are an apikoros. If you put down the Talmid Chacham, or you look down at the Talmid Chacham, you're considered an apikoros. That's a very dangerous thing. Over here, also, the idea is that the Talmid Chacham carries the message of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the Torah. Over here, the Christians also fall into the category of apikoros because they are kofer. They don't believe that the message of Kadosh Baruch Hu is the Torah in the authentic way that our Chachamim gave it over. 3 נקראים אפיקורסים, אומר שהם שאין נבואה כלל, אין מטה שמגיע מהבורא ללב בני אדם, המכחיש נבואתו של משה רבנו. Either a person that doesn't believe in the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu, the way we received it, or he has other problems with the Torah, and that's what he continues the Rambam and says, 3 הם הכופרים בתורה, there's 3 כופרים in the Torah, אומר שאין התורה מעם השם, אפילו פסוק אחד, אפילו תיבה אחת. ואם אמר משה אמרו מפני עצמו, הרי זה כופר בתורה. If a person says that this pasuk, Moshe Rabbeinu said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu never told him, Moshe Rabbeinu made it up, or this pasuk is not from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even teva achat, even one word, you should know that that's considered to be a כופר בתורה. כן הכופר בפירושה, ואין התורה שבעל פה. A person that says, I believe in the Torah שבכתב, I believe in the text of the Torah, the way it's written, but I don't believe in the oral Torah, Torah shebe'al peh. That's considered also a kofer. And the Rambam gives an idea to that. If also you say that this is true, that is the Bible. But there's a new Bible. There's an Old Testament and there's a New Testament, says the Rambam over here. הקדוש ברוך הוא changed the mitzvot, changed the Torah, כבר בטלה תורה זו, אף על פי שהייתה מעם השם. It was from הקדוש ברוך הוא, that Bible, that Old Testament. But you have a New Testament, a person that says such a thing, believes such a thing, is considered to be a kofer, and the Rambam gives an example, kegon hanotzrim. Some versions take that out because of the censor, but in the original Rambam it says kegon hanotzrim, just like the Christians that were kofer in the Torah in that aspect. So they have over here a problem of avodah zarah, minut, apikosut, or kfirah, however you want to categorize this. So this is Christianity. Now let's see a little bit about that idea of Christianity and see the Pesukim that indicate just not like they are saying, because there are a lot of ideas that Christians believe and they all base it on the text. They do believe in the Torah shebichtav. They believe in the Old Testament. They're saying that the Old Testament is true. Just HaKadosh Baruch Hu changed the nation and he gave a new Bible as well. But they do believe that whatever it says in the Torah is true, and it has to fit everything that they say into the words that the Torah says. So let's see if the Torah actually agrees with the way they're thinking. The Torah in many, many places takes away the notion of what the Christians try to spread out, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has partners, and he became a three Godhead, which what they call is Trinity, and it's built out of the Father, the Son, and Ruach HaKodesh as well with that. And let's see if the Torah agrees with such a notion. Secondly, they say that there is a God that was formed into a person, and he came into this world. Does the Torah agrees with that aspect as well? And does the Torah agrees that one could change the message of God? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, could HaKadosh Baruch Hu ever change the message? Or can HaKadosh Baruch Hu change his nation and take a different nation instead? So let's start with the first thing. Is HaKadosh Baruch Hu only one? Or maybe he has partners as well, just like the Trinity idea tries to teach us. It says in Parashat Yitro, in Aseret HaDibrot, the very first dibra, the very first message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to tell us in the Ten Commandments is וידבר אלוקים את כל הדברים האלה לאמור. This is the very first דיברה, אנוכי השם אלוקיך אשר הוצאתיך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים, לא יהיה לך אלוקים אחרים על פניי. I am the God that took you out of Egypt from the place of slavery. You should not have another God besides me. There's no other God besides me. I'm the only one. And therefore, clearly you see in the first dibra that HaKadosh Baruch Hu indicates and tells us, I don't think I have a partner, and don't think there's another God besides me. It's only me. Also, in Dvarim, it says the same thing. In Dvarim, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu repeats the Aseret HaDibrot. He says the same idea. Lo yeh lecha elokim acherim al panai. You should not worship and you should not believe any other God besides me. So you see over here, right away in the beginning, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tried to tell us, so don't be mistaken with that. And then, in Parashat V'etchanan, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives that message again. Ata oret aladat ki Hashem hu Elokim en od milvado. You came to learn over here that Hashem is the only God and there's nobody besides him. So again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes sure that we're not going to be mistaken anytime in history to think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has partners or there's somebody else besides him. You should know that there's only one power called HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ve'en od milvado. Now you just learned, ki Hashem hu Elokim. Only Hashem is the God, en od milvado. Right away after that, few psukim down, ve'adat hayom ve'ashavot levavecha, you should know, and you should bring it to your heart, means to say, strengthen your emunah with it, ki Hashem hu Elokim b'shamayim mima'al, ve'al ha'aretz mitachat, en od. Hashem is the only God, up in heaven and down on earth, and there's nobody besides him. Don't be mistaken to think that there's somebody else besides HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Another pasuk that we all very familiar with is Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. There's only one Hashem. You don't have anybody else besides Hashem. It's the only power, it's the only God in the whole world. Lo telchu acharei Elohim acherim me'eloi amim asher sivotechem. Pesukim ve'etchanan says, don't be mistaken to go and follow other gods from the surrounding nations. Other nations might have different gods and different ideas of religion, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and says, I am the only one, and don't be mistaken to follow any other god besides me. Another pasuk in Parashat Va'azinu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu very clearly speaks over here and says, Re'u ata, you should watch and see. Ki ani hu, I am the only one, en Elohim imadi, and there's no other god together with me. What do you want clearer than that? HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself says, I'm the only one and there's nobody with me. So how could you go and spread the God into three Godheads? This notion of Trinity very clearly over here is being contradicted. In Melachim Aleph, the 8th perek, it says, Leman dat kol amei haaretz, ki Hashem hu Elohim en od. The idea over here is that every person in the world should know that only Hashem is the God and there's nobody else besides him. Another pasuk that says the same message is in Melachim Bet Lamed Aleph, V'ata Hashem Elokeinu hoshienu na miyado, ve'ed'u kol mamlachot haaretz. All the places in the world should know, ki ata Hashem Elokim levadecha. You are the only God and there's nobody else besides you. Again and again the Torah continues that same message, telling us over and over again that message, that the Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have partners, there's nobody besides him, he doesn't spread into different parts or particles, and there's no other power in the world besides him. Pasuk in Yeshaya Mem Gimel Yud, Atem edai neum Hashem. You are my witnesses, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ve'avdi asher bacharti, leman ted'u v'ta'aminu li, in order that you should know and believe me. V'tavinu ki ani hu, I am the only one. Lefanai lo notzar el, before me there was no other God, v'acharai lo yeh, and there's not going to be anybody after me. So Kadosh Baruch Hu says, in present time, I don't spread into parts. I don't become more than one. I don't have other partners. There's no other gods besides me. And there's nobody before me, and there's nobody after me. Clearly indicating that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is just one without any other idea behind it. Uchvodi la'acher lo eten, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that I will not give my glory to anybody else. The glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu belongs to him and only him. And he doesn't give it and doesn't spread it to anybody else. If anybody wants in the Nehemiah pasuk that clearly indicates all that, Ata Hashem levadecha, ta'asita et hashamayim shne hashamayim, v'chol tzva'am, haaretz v'chol asher alea. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that made everything, the world, the sky, kol asher bahem, v'atam chayet kulam, tzva shamayim lecha mishtachavim. Everybody, everything is bowing down to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How the pasuk starts? Ata Hashem levadecha. You are Hashem alone. There's nobody else besides you. So here we have already the Pesukim that continuously telling us that there's nobody else besides HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But now we need to know, maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes in a form of a person. Maybe there's such a thing, just like Jesus was. They saying that he was a God, and he was in the form of a person. Could that be? Also the Torah says that can't be. Why? Because the pasuk in Balak says, Lo ish el vichazev uven adam vitnecham. Hu amar velo yasena vediber velo yikimena. Means to say, the pasuk says, Lo ish el. God is not a man. Lo ish el. God is not a man. Vichazev, and therefore he doesn't lie. Uven adam, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not a son of a person, vitnecham. He's not also a person or a son that comes from a person that he should have regret for what he's doing, or he should lie. A person many times, does things, and therefore it says things, and therefore it doesn't follow along with it, doesn't keep what he said that he's going to do. Diber v'lo yekimena. But the Kadosh Baruch Hu is not like that. He's not a man. Therefore, these Pesukim indicate, and don't think, and don't be mistaken, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could ever come into a shape of a person. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have a shape, and doesn't go into a form of a person. Pasuk in Shmuel says, וגם נצח ישראל לא ישקר ולא ינחם. כי לא אדם הוא להנחם. The eternal one of Israel will not lie or change his mind. Why not? For he's not a man. He's not a man that he should change his mind. That's what he says. כי לא אדם הוא להנחם. God is not a man. And therefore, since he's not a man, we don't have any problem understanding that Jesus, that they claim that he was God, doesn't fit into this Pesukim at all, into the understanding of the Torah. Pasuk in Melachim Aleph, Perek Zayin. Ki ha'umnam yeshev Elohim al haaretz. Is it possible, does it come to the mind, such an idea that it's possible that a God could be on the earth? Impossible. Inei hashamayim v'shmei hashamayim lo yichalkelucha. Even the heaven can't hold HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Af ki habayit hazeh asher baniti. Could you build a Bet Mikdash and HaKadosh Baruch Hu would fit inside? Impossible. But the Pasuk says over here, Ki ha'umnam yashev Elohim al haaretz. Is it possible that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would sit on the earth, would be on the earth, would come down to earth as a form of a person? Of course not. And therefore all these Pesukim indicate very clearly, and they throw away the notion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu coming in the shape of a person. And therefore, we come to understand how did the story of Jesus ever come to reality. We need to understand that in his time, nobody took him seriously to be anything godly. Even he himself kept on telling people that he's not a god. When they asked him, what is he? He said he's the son of a god. Son of a god, they told him, so you have mitah. You also considering yourself something of a power that you're not. He told them, what do you want from me? All Israel are considered son of gods. They are called also the Banim, the sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I'm not any difference. Over here, he clearly said with that, and he admitted with that he's not any different than any other person. So who made him into a God? That was generations afterwards. That is, students that they wrote the New Testament tried to give him different powers. The problem with that is that even in his own time, he couldn't save himself. Whenever he was chased by the people, according to their understanding, he was not even able to defend himself. Could it be that a God can't defend himself? At the time that he was dying, he was screaming, Eli, Eli, lama azavtani? God, why did you leave me alone? Why did you abandon me? How could that be? Could a God scream to God and ask him for help and say, why did you abandon me? How could that be? If you're a God, you can save yourself from others. And that's what the Jews told him. If you believe that you're a God, go and save yourself. And if you're not, then obviously you're not a God. Those that follow him couldn't take that conclusion of coming to the reality that he's not a God. And what happens when you believe all the time that the person that's in front of you has eternal powers? What you do is, afterwards, you try to give it different ideas that they did right afterwards, saying that after 3 days he came back, he made a coming, and he gave the message over, he didn't really die, and afterwards, although he didn't yet fulfill all his prophecies, or the prophecies of the prophets in the Nevi'im, that what's going to happen when Mashiach comes, but that's going to be eventually when he's going to come for second coming. Whenever you want to say something like that, you very obviously showing the weakness of your truth, because if you have a truth, you have to be able to defend that truth with concrete evidence. If you come up and say that all these things, all my proofs are going to eventually come to reality, come to truth on the second coming, that doesn't stand any grounds of proof, because you can't defend that proof. You can't bring it to the table and say, I have any kind of stable, concrete ideas that I can prove that what I'm saying is true. Rather, I'm saying that in the future it's going to come true. Okay, in the future it could come true. Anybody could become a Mashiach in the future, but we don't have for that kind of idea anybody more than or less than Jesus. Could be anybody else as much as him, as himself. And therefore, we don't have to believe such a thing. And according to the Torah, we're not allowed to believe any of those ideas because of the Pesukim we just saw. The Gemara itself tells us what happened with this Jesus. How did he go down, what we call today, get off the derech? How did he go off the derech? The Gemara in Sotah tells us that he was a student of Rav Yeshua ben Prachya. And Rav Yeshua ben Prachya, there was a Tana, made a mistake with him. He didn't behave to him the way the Gemara said he should have. What did he do? What he did was, dachfo le'echad mitalvidav v'shtei yadav. He was acting to him too roughly. He was not bringing him close, and rather he was pushing him away. Dachfo le'echad mitalmidav v'shtei yadav. The Gemara says the following. When Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya came back from Mitzrayim, so he had his student Jesus with him, and they were invited to stay by somebody, by a host, and they treated them very, very nicely over there. The host treated them very nicely. The hospitality was very, very nice. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya turned to Yeshu, to Jesus, and told him, Look at this hospitality, so beautiful. So the Gemara says over here in Sotah Mem Zayin that Yeshu told him, no, she has round eyes. He understood that Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya really indicating to the wife of the host, of the person that invited them. And therefore, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya couldn't hold this, that Yeshu was looking at his wife instead of understanding what really he meant, and that was that the hospitality was nice, means to say they took care of them so nicely, and right away he put him in cherem. He took out 400 shofarot and blew them in order to put him in cherem. Every time Yeshu tried to come, every day Yeshu tried to come to Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya to ask for forgiveness and come back. Kol yom ata lekameh velo kible. Yom achad, one day, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya said, that's it. Now, today I'm going to accept him back, bring him back to yeshiva, bring him back to be my student, and forgive what he did. Let's see if he changed his ways. But when he came to ask for forgiveness and to be accepted back, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachya was reading Kriyat Shema, and he wasn't able to talk to him at that time. He was reading the Kriyat Shema. Avekakari Kriyat Shema, ate lekameh, bedate lekvule. Ach vebeyade. He told him that he should wait a little bit until he finishes Kriyat Shema. He made such a hint in his hand. Yeshu didn't understand. He thought that when he's doing that, he's really pushing him again, and that was already something that he couldn't handle. This was like the last straw that broke the camel back, and therefore he ran away and he started the new cult and the new religion that caused us so much suffering until today. And therefore, the Gemara says that eventually he started doing things that were not allowed to be done. What did the Chachamim do with that? Chachamim decided that he's chayav mitah. Why? Because he was masit umadiach et Israel. Means to say, he turned them away from God. Whenever anybody tries to turn somebody away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's called the masit umatiach. The Gemara says, Lo tachos enecha alav, lo tachmol velo terachem. Don't feel pity on him. Don't feel bad for him. You have to kill that person. A person that tries to take people away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says the Torah, you don't have any rachmanut on him. Therefore, the punishment they gave him was a mitat bet din. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Mem Gimel Amud Bet says, Be'erev Pesach talu al Yeshu HaNotzri. On Erev Pesach, they hung Yeshu. Why did they hang him? Because since he was Masit Umadiach, he's Chayav Skila. When they stone him, after they stone him, they have to hang him. That's what the Torah says. That Kol HaNiskalim Nitlim. You hang him, you take him down. When did they do that? Erev Pesach. הכרוז יוצא לפניו מהם יום. 40 days beforehand, they tried to see if anybody would be melamed zechut. Maybe somebody would say something that we could save this person. ישו הנוצרי יוצא להסתכל על שכישף והסית והדיח את ישראל. כל מי שיודע לו זכות יבוא וילמד עליו. Anybody that knows any zechut should come and say it on him. Nobody came forward and therefore he was chayav mitah. The Gemara says over here afterwards that really they didn't need to do such a thing, that to go around and ask if anybody has zechut for him. And the reason, because in masit umadiach you don't look for zechut for such a thing. Only different averot, but not masit umadiach. But they wanted to give him a chance because he was karov lemalchut, means to say he was close to the government. They didn't want to get in trouble with the government, so they followed along with that procedure. But eventually he was stoned and he was hung. The Gemara says, how did he become to be such a masit umadiach? There is a Gemara in Shabbat Kuf Daled. The Gemara says over there that Ben Sitda, the Gemara refers a few times in Shas to Yeshu. In Sanhedrin also, when the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Peitet, speaks about Yeshu, she calls him Ben Sitda, the son of Sitda. The Gemara explained why did he get that label, that name. Sitda means Sata Dami Ba'ala. She was wrongdoing her husband. Means to say Miriam, which was Miriam Megadla Nasha, the Gemara speaks about that she was a hairdresser, and that was the mother of Jesus. She was Sata Dami Ba'ala. She was engaged already to her husband, and she was with another man, and this is how they got Jesus. He was therefore, according to that, a mamzer. You're not allowed to have son. You're not allowed to have relation outside marriage, and especially if you're married. So therefore, this son of her was a mamzer. Yeshu was a mamzer. Therefore, it's called Ben Sitda, the son of that was wrongdoing her husband. What did he do? הוציא כשפים ממצרים בסריטה שעל בשרו. He wrote on his flesh, on his body, he scratched the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu when he went to Beit HaMikdash. As we saw before, he learned together with Rabbi Yeshua ben Pachi, he was his Talmid, he was together with the Chachamim, with the Tanaim HaKadoshim. So therefore, when he went to Yerushalayim, he wrote in Tzrita, he scratched the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the long name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that with that name you can do all kind of miracles, all kind of big things. He wrote, since the Chachamim wouldn't let him take it out on a piece of paper, so he wrote it on his flesh. They didn't know that that's how he did it, and he came out with it. And with that, he was able to do a lot of things. The Gemara says over here, Rashi says over here, why did he do that? He couldn't take it out on a piece of paper like I explained. But he did it. And therefore, he was able with that to do a lot of things that eventually, all kind of miracles that eventually he did. But although he did all these miracles, we already mentioned that the Pesukim in the Torah say that if somebody would come and do all kind of miracles like that, don't be mistaken by such a person to think that he has all kind of powers. Don't be mistaken. Rather, somebody that does such a thing, you should stay away from him, understanding that everything he's doing is an isayon from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, this over here as well, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ki yakum b'kirbecha navi o cholem chalom, when somebody would come amongst you and would start saying that he's a navi, or he's a cholem chalom, he has powers, natan elecha oto mofet, ba'oto mofet asher edaber elecha, those miracles that he said he will do actually came about. And he says, he says, let's change the Torah, let's worship other gods, let's have a three-God Trinity, and so on and so forth. The Torah says, don't listen to him. This is a nisayon, it's a test from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to see if you really love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because if you really do, you don't follow him. Although it looks so wonderful, he's doing miracles, and it's all exciting, but nevertheless, Torah says, be careful. אחרי השם אלוקיכם תלכו, אותו תיראו ואת מצוותיו תשמרו, וכל עוד תשמע אותו, תעבודו ובו תדבקון. You should follow only הקדוש ברוך הוא. Don't be mistaken from such things. הקדוש ברוך הוא already in the Torah tells us there's going to be such a thing in the future. Be careful from such an event that comes. What do you do to him, to this person that claimed that he was a prophet, or he was a dreamer, or he was a Mashiach, a false Mashiach, or even if he says that he's a God? What do you do with him? You mat. You should kill him, just like we saw that the Sanhedrin did to him. Why is that? כי דיבר שרה על השם אלוקיכם ומוציא אתכם מארץ מצרים. So therefore, according to that, we can clearly wrap up saying that we have pretty much evident that Christianity came along with completely false ideas against everything that the Torah indicates and teaches us.